Hey everyone, we finally reached the last week of Hey Affixes, and this week we will be talking about suffixes, the hey that comes at the end of the word. Shalom lekulam. Today we are talking all about the hey suffix. So there are two different reasons for a hey suffix, and I will talk about both of them today. The first one is really well known, even to super beginners, and it's actually so ubiquitous that I almost forgot to include it in this video. And that is its use as the feminine form of something, either a noun or a verb or an adjective. So basically in Hebrew, grammatically speaking, there are two genders. We've got masculine and feminine. For nouns that do not refer to people or animals, the gender of that noun is completely random. It's just a total fluke of grammar that whether a word ends up as a feminine noun or a masculine noun. But when it comes to people and animals, every word that refers to that person or that animal is going to be either masculine or feminine, depending on whether the person or the animal is male or female. I can't even say my friend without indicating whether that friend of mine is a man or a woman. Now, obviously, this has some complications when we are talking about members of the trans community that do not identify as either masculine or feminine. I am not trying to disrespect the trans community in any way, shape, or form. It's just that this is how Hebrew is. And if a change ever happens and I'm aware of it, I will definitely make a video about it. But for the time being, I have to teach the language the way it is. Here I am just talking about the hey that goes on the end of nouns to make a feminine version of that person or that animal. So here we have a couple of nouns. And so here, this top one, we have talmid, and then the feminine version is talmidah. So talmid is a male student and talmidah is a female student. And we see it and it has a hey on the end. If we hear it, we hear that it has an ah sound at the end. And that's how we know it's a female student. Now, in English, we have a handful of professions that have this distinction. We have actor and actress, steward, stewardess, waiter, waitress, and gosh, even for these three that are the only three that I can really remember. So I'm trying to think, these are really the only three that I can think of in English. And even these, so like waiter and waitress, if I say someone's a waitress, that does not in the slightest sound weird to me. But I am aware that there's also the neutral term server. And same with steward and stewardess. Now that one does sound quite old to me. It's something that I remember hearing as a child on an airplane, but certainly not in the last 3 decades. Every time I hear someone talk about a person formerly known as a steward or a stewardess, we always call them a flight attendant. And also actor and actress. Now, in my mind, I still think of a female person as an actress. And so when I hear them referred to as an actor, that it kind of jars my brain a little bit. But I don't have any problem with the fact that language is changing, but it still just sounds a little off to me. But language changes, right? Every language, any living language is in a constant state of changing. And so it's really slow change. It's kind of like continental drift, but it's fast enough that they're in every generation, since time immemorial. The grandparents have always complained about the way their grandkids talk because new terms come about, new innovations, no matter what, new ways of speaking have always existed. And so language change happens, and I embrace it. So, Hebrew is undergoing some change as well. I do remember that when I learned Hebrew in college in the late 80s and early 90s, a female professor would be referred to as professorit. That "it" ending is a different feminine ending. And nowadays, I see female professors all the time referred to as professor. So Hebrew is undergoing a little bit of a change here too. But that doesn't mean that things don't still sound weird to me when I hear them. And that is the case when I hear a woman referred to as an actor. But it's stronger than that in Hebrew. If there is a female student and you call them a talmid, it's just grammatically wrong. They need to be referred to as a talmidah. And then their verbs are going to be feminine and their adjectives are going to be feminine as well. If in Hebrew you refer to a female student as a talmid, it's almost akin to referring to a mother as a father, right? It's just wrong. Yeah, there's still a parent, but you use the wrong gender. And it is equally wrong in Hebrew to say talmid to refer to a female student. So it's really important to use the right form when you're talking about a person. You're either going to use the masculine form or the feminine form. And that feminine form is one of the ways to make the feminine form is to add a hey at the end. And it's got a kamatz right before it, so it's going to sound like ah. But we can see with my example about the professorit that this is not the only way. There's a couple of different ways to make a feminine version of a noun. But I think "a" is a super, super common way. And as I think I already mentioned, adding the hey suffix can also affect the nikud of the word. And now, so this is going to refer to the vowels, but also whether or not there is a dagesh in certain letters. So, for example, this word kelev means dog. And that's the normal word that we would use if we don't know the gender of a dog. But if we have a female dog and we know she's female, we are going to call her kalba. Kalba. It was kelev, but it's kalba. So kelev has two segels in it. When we make it kalba, that first segel becomes a patach, and the second segel gets reduced to a schwa. So there's a schwa under the lamed, and then we have the ah ending. But we also, for some reason, get a dagesh in that bet. So it's not kalva, it's kalba. Now, there may be some rhyme or reason to these vowel changes and whether or not to put a dagesh in a letter. I've never been taught it in all of my years of studying Hebrew. We basically are told that we need to memorize the masculine form and the feminine form. Now, there are also a couple of verb types that have a hey suffix for the feminine singular in the present tense. And the first one is pa'al verbs, binyan pa'al, gizrat, ayin, vav, and ayin yod. In case you're not super familiar with verbs, what that means is a binyan is a category of verbs. There are 7 of them in Hebrew. Each category has a specific way that all of the root letters fit into it to make the specific verbs. within each main category, there are also subcategories called a gizra. And this particular gizra is ayin vav and ayin yod. That means that the second letter of the shoresh is either a vav or a yod. And so these are verbs like lavo, larutz, lashir, and they're really, really super different. One of the differences is that their singular feminine form in the present tense has a hey ending. And so we say ani ba or ani ba'a, ani ratz, ani ratza, ani shar, ani shara. And so these are different from all of the other pa'al verbs, which have an et ending for their feminine singular present tense verbs. So like ani lomed, ani lomedet. For the regular verbs and also for most of the other gzarot, most of the other subcategories. And all of the hif'il verbs also have a hey ending for the present tense feminine singular. So margish, margisha, mechin, mechina, makir, makira. And you might say, aha, but what about lamed hey / lamed yod verbs like rotse, rotza, or menase, menasa? And it's true that the feminine verb forms in the present tense, the feminine singular, also has a hey, but that hey is part of the shoresh. It's not really, the masculine singular also has a hey, menase or rotse or all of those verbs. The masculine also has a hey. It just has a different vowel under the second shoresh letter. Rotse, rotza, kone, kona, menase, menasa. And adjectives also usually get a hey, a kamatz hey, when they are referring to a feminine thing, a feminine noun. And sometimes also with adjectives, there is a vowel reduction or a change in a vowel. So if we look at this first one, we have atzuv, which means sad, and atzuva, which also means sad, but now it's referring to a feminine thing. And on this one, that first vowel is an atzuv. That first vowel is a kamatz, and it wants to reduce to a schwa, but it can't because that first letter is an ayin, and an ayin cannot have a schwa, and so it becomes a chataf patach, but it actually sounds exactly the same. So atzuv, atzuva. You can't really hear the difference in that first vowel. And to be honest, that's all we modern Hebrew speakers care about is the sound of it, because we never write with nikud. We're not interested in nikud at all, except to know how to pronounce something. So if you have two different vowels that are pronounced the same, we don't care that it's different. You hear more of a vowel change with kachol and chula. So you hear that we have kachol, and that first vowel gets reduced to a schwa when we add the patache at the end for a feminine. And then also the o, the cholamale, becomes a shuruk. So it's kachol, chula, and this means blue. So it's really the short adjectives like this word zol that don't get any vowel changes. So we have zol, zola, no vowel change at all. Yakar means expensive, and this one we can see the typical reduction in a vowel. Yakar for masculine, yekara, with a schwa in that first position for the feminine. Again, I'm sure there might be rules, but we basically just learn the masculine and the feminine form. So that's it for the feminine suffix hey. And lastly, we've got a way, way, way less productive suffix, which is hey hamegana, and this is the directional hey. This was used in the Tanakh in all kinds of situations, and again, I discovered one while I was researching my Sunday video. It's the same story where Joseph made his half-brothers bring his full brother to Egypt, And when they finally go to Egypt with his brother Benjamin, he's overcome with emotion and on the verge of tears. So just to remind you, this is Genesis 43:30. And the verse says, Vayemaher Yosef ki nichmeru rachamav el achiv. Vayevakesh livkot. Vayavo hachadra. Vayev shama. And the JPS translation is, with that, Joseph hurried out, for he was overcome with feeling toward his brother and was on the verge of tears. He went into a room and wept there. So, cheder means room. And so we put what I'm pretty sure is Hey Hayedi'ah at the beginning, Ha-cheder. And then we also have to put the Hey Hamagana at the end to say to the room. And then we get a bunch of vowel changes. So, Ha-chadra. Other examples from the Tanakh are Ha'ira, meaning to the city, and Mitzrayima, meaning to Egypt. And I'm sure there are plenty of others. In modern Hebrew, we only have a few uses left over. We have Habaita, which means home, going home. And we have Hashuka, which means to the market. And then we also have Ha'ira, which means to the city. And I learned this as a perfectly normal way to say to go to the city back in 1989, 1990. And but my consultant says nowadays nobody really says that. If you're outside of a city completely and you're going to a city, then you're just going to say where you're going, right? I'm going to Le Tel Aviv or Li Yerushalayim. But if you are kind of on the outskirts of the city and you're going like into the center of the town, so you're going into town, they use La Merkaz, to the center. Quick side note, I have another consultant who lives in Haifa, and she says that she still would use ha'ira, always with the verb laredet, which means to go down. So she would say, Ani yoredet ha'ira, meaning I am going downtown, and laredet is the proper verb in Haifa because the downtown area is specifically like at a lower elevation than all of the other areas of Haifa. So for her, it is still a perfectly good construction to say ha'ira. Whereas for my other consultant, he said, no, nobody uses it. So you can see that there is still a big difference in what, even though Israel is such a small country, there's a big difference in what different people consider acceptable. Oh, something else I want to mention here, which was recently brought to my attention by Ruti Yudovich. She's an amazing Hebrew educator, is that it is possible to also say labait. And it just has a different meaning. So bait can mean house or home. And if you say ani holechet habaita, you're specifically saying I am going home, to my home. But if you say, you can also say ani holechet labait. And that just means I'm going to the house. Not my house, some house that we've already been talking about. And that's why it's the house and not a house. But if I'm going to the house of someone else, or I'm just, the new house that I'm a realtor or whatever, I'm going to the house. Ani holechet labait. So toda Ruti for bringing that up. And the other really common uses for He HaMegama are the directions. So tzafona, mizracha, daroma, ma'arava. And so if you want to say someone lives in the north, you would say batzafon. But if you are going north, tzafona. And the same is true. We have right and left, yamina vesmola. And that's to the right and to the left. So if you want to say something is on the right side, it's on the tzad yamin or tzad smol. All right, that's it for today. Now you know what to think about when you see a hey prefix or suffix. So if you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments. And especially if you have any aspect of grammar that has you flummoxed, let me know and I will do a video on it. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lahitwaot, Papa Ama Ba'a. See you next time.